again, as Kelly indicated, when and if his team comes out, including Hunter Biden himself, and they say anything, of course, we're on top of that as well. John Yoo, the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, kind enough to join us on yet another legal case. Jonathan Turley, I don't know how these guys keep track of all these various cases for so many prominent individuals, GW law professor. Jonathan, begin with you. This 56-page indictment that's the source of this action today essentially says that Hunter Biden earned more than $7 million in gross income, failed to pay his taxes. These were add-ons to the gun charges. Nevertheless, this was something that was never supposed to evolve with that failed summer plea agreement that just fell apart. There must be a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda in the Hunter Biden legal team about that.
Oh, I think there is. I mean, the most regretted words from the Delaware arraignment was rip it up, which they did. They ripped up the plea agreement, and that really pushed the Justice Department to bring these charges. It's also important to note that the indictment that you're referring to is the abridged version, because the Department of Justice allowed critical potential felonies to expire by allowing the statute of limitations to run. What's notable about that is that internally whistleblowers were saying, why are we doing this? We have the ability to extend that period. And outside, many of us were writing at the time saying, this is expiring. And yet the Department of Justice has never explained why they allowed those crimes going back, those alleged crimes going back to 2014. To expire. Those payments, that money, involve some of the most controversial transactions involving this influence peddling scheme that the Biden family is accused of.
Now, these various counts, as I see it, nine counts, if found guilty on all of them, John, I guess he could be in prison for 17 years. Very unlikely. But let me ask you a more theoretical question. Do you see any prison time at all coming from any of these charges at all?
Neil, I could see some jail time. As your reporter just mentioned, this trial judge sitting on this case now has already sentenced people in similar circumstances who refused to pay similar amounts, sentenced them to 2 years behind bars. Several of the charges are misdemeanors, which mean jail time is unlikely and there would be fines. But 3 of the charges are felonies. And I think it would be hard for this administration, which has been making a big deal politically and in public about going after tax cheats, about ramping up tax enforcement, to then turn around and say, but the Justice Department isn't going to seek jail time for someone who we have dead to rights on the evidence and is committing crimes, tax crimes, for which normal people would go to jail.
You know, obviously Congress is very interested in all of his wrongdoings, and we remember the theatrics yesterday. I don't see here, Jonathan, any of that kind of behavior today, particularly with this judge at this court at this time, given these charges. What do you make of that?
No, it wouldn't be tolerated. I mean, the circus we saw yesterday was really, astonishing for many of us. You have someone who has openly defied Congress and doubled down on that yesterday and brought with him this individual who's paying for a new movie to be done on his life. And indeed, this might have been part of that B-roll effort for the movie. You can't get away with that in a court, certainly not in front of this judge. So I think that it's going to be much more toned down. But the other question I think facing the prosecutors is that, look, for a Biden family member, there is no better place than Los Angeles for a jury pool. So this is not a hostile jurisdiction. They've got a very respected judge, a tough judge, but a very respected judge who's going to push this trial along. And one of the things we'll be looking at very early on is, what is the trial date going to be, at least initially, set by the court? We've talked a lot about how these trial dates are complicating things for former President Trump. Well, there's also a number of dates that could be complicating things for President Biden, and that's not including the real possibility of a contempt sanction and possible prosecution of Hunter Biden. I mean, if the House goes ahead and approves that sanction, it's going to put the Justice Department in a very difficult place because it aggressively pursued some Trump officials, and people will expect them to do the same with the president's son.
Yeah, and by the way, as both of you were intimating here at the outset here, Hunter Biden has pled not guilty to these tax charges, all 9 counts, including filing a false return, which is a felony, a tax evasion, another felony, failure to pay, which is a misdemeanor in 4 different counts here. Don't understand how that sorts out, and failure to file, period. So having said that, and he having done that, John, then the question becomes, would this move to a trial, and what kind of a trial? And we talked, and Jonathan Turley was bringing this up, John, the idea of the president maybe having to consider that, even though he's not part of this. It does get to be a busy legal calendar season, doesn't it?
I totally agree, Neil. The longer this goes on, the more legal and political problems this causes, not just for Hunter, but for his family and for the president. Just take that circus that happened on the Hill yesterday. As Jonathan pointed out, this is going to throw the president himself into hot water because he might have to decide whether his Justice Department is going to prosecute Hunter Biden, his son, for defying a congressional subpoena, a charge that they did vigorously pursue against former Trump officials. So I think Abby Lowell, and Hunter Biden are thinking about this rationally. They should be trying to plead this case out. They don't ever want this to go into a courtroom. They don't ever want Hunter Biden to be cross-examined or examined by the U.S. government under oath about what he did with this money, why he didn't pay his taxes, what he was up to, how many more years this went on, who else in the Biden family benefited from the money he's bringing in and the money he's refusing to report on his taxes. That's what they tried to do in Wilmington. They tried to reach a sweetheart plea deal. They were too greedy in trying to get too good terms out of the government. So I think what will happen, Neil, as you say, this is probably not going to go to trial, but I think Hunter is going to have to accept some pretty draconian settlement terms from the government in order to take this off the docket.
Here's where the congressional probe maybe weighs into some of the issues that are coming up here, gentlemen, and Jonathan Turley will explore this with you. Obviously, an issue here is Hunter Biden and the money he made and didn't pay taxes on. Better than $7 million in gross income. He failed to pay taxes on it, ultimately costing about $1.5 million. They say he funded an extravagant lifestyle by evading these taxes, a lot of personal expenditures for luxury hotel stays, luxury rentals, escort services, a lot more. Counted them as business deductions and the like. Now, the reason why the business deductions and all might come into play is that, many House Republicans who are exploring separate actions against him have been trying and saying they have been able to successfully link a lot of those business dealings with the father. Now, the investigation thus far has not uncovered any wrongdoing by the president, but the president, I think, has called this a baseless political stunt. But that's where it gets into the foggy area of political one-upmanship, and that one side is going to say, well, there's got to be something there, and all these monies and transactions and business dealings, again, with foreign entities, China, et cetera, the father had to have known about it. And that gets into a whole nother ball of wax, right?
I think it does. The fact is that there's I think, a misconception that's been fueled by the Hunter Biden team and also the White House that you need to show that money went directly to the president. They may or may not be able to show that. But that's not the standard in bribery cases. Courts have said repeatedly that money going to your family is considered bribery. And keep in mind, influence peddling is corrupt. It is a form of corruption the United States has actually forced international agreements to combat. Now, most of us now agree, including many deniers earlier, that this was a massive influence peddling scheme. So the question is, could the president not have known about this, particularly because articles were appearing in the press? And if he did know about it, if he did know that his family was cashing in on his position and access, then he was also corrupt. And that is something I think the House committees are looking into.
All right. Gentlemen, again, for those of you just joining us here, outside the Los Angeles Federal courthouse where we just learned that Hunter Biden has pled not guilty to these various tax charges in California, including filing a false return, tax evasion, failure to pay taxes, failure to file even the taxes here. That a lot of money, about $7 million in gross income, was never reported, and ultimately that was money that he owed at least $1.4 to $1.5 million in taxes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.